The first heavy snowflakes of the season began to fall just as Elara checked her reflection in the visor mirror, wondering if this night would finally be the one where her mother-in-law saw her, and not just the color of her skin. David reached over and squeezed her hand, a gesture that felt more nervous than supportive. "Don't worry, Ellie. Mom just needs time. It's her 60th birthday. She'll be in a good mood tonight." Elara wished she could believe him, but the familiar knot of anxiety was already tightening in her stomach. The luxury sedan wound its way through the exclusive roads of Greenwich, Connecticut. Outside, the wind was picking up, turning the gentle snowfall into the beginnings of a serious storm. The cold atmosphere seeped into the car, mirroring the chill Elara always felt when approaching the Windsor estate. David, oblivious, chatted brightly about the expensive cashmere scarf Elara had painstakingly chosen for his mother. "She'll love this, Ellie." "Really?" Elara only nodded, watching the imposing gates of the estate grow closer. She recalled the last family dinner, the subtle ways Margaret had dismissed her opinions, the polite questions about her background that were designed to highlight she didn't have one. They pulled up to the brightly lit, imposing mansion. Valets rushed to their car, greeting David warmly. "Mr. Windsor." "A pleasure, sir." "Nasty storm tonight." As Elara stepped out in her elegant silk emerald dress, she received only polite, cold nods. The house was exactly as she remembered. Heavy, dark wood, the scent of pine and old polish, and walls lined with ancestral portraits of stern-faced white men and women. It was a house built on lineage, designed to make anyone without it feel small. Margaret Windsor, celebrating her 60th birthday, was standing near the grand staircase. She embraced David in a lavish hug, her son, her pride. Then she turned to Elara. Her smile tightened, barely touching her eyes. "Elara, how nice of you to come." Her eyes scanned Elara's dress, a silent judgment that suggested it was a costume, a failed attempt to fit in. Margaret immediately pointed to Elara's shoulder. "Do try to keep yourself presentable, dear. We have very important guests tonight. The Vances are here." The implication was clear. Elara, by her very presence, was not presentable. David, hearing the name Vances, brightened and immediately steers Elara toward the bar, ignoring the insult. "Come on, you have to meet them." Elara is left feeling scrutinized and completely alone before the party has even truly begun. Elara has just been left completely isolated, and we can all feel that cold shoulder from Margaret. If you are still watching and you find value in seeing this story unfold, please comment with the number 8 below, just to let us know you're here with her in this moment. And if you haven't subscribed to Black Brilliance yet, highly recommend you do. We are dedicated to sharing these powerful stories of resilience and justice. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you don't miss how Elara navigates the hostility of this party. Your support helps us continue to create wonderful content that informs and inspires. Now, let's get back to the party. The grand ballroom buzzed with the sound of polite laughter and clinking champagne flutes, but for Elara, it felt like a soundproof bubble had descended around her. She remembered David's promise that his mother would be in a good mood, but she watched Margaret across the room, holding court with Mrs. Eleanor Vance. Both women, clad in expensive, old-fashioned gowns and heirloom jewelry, would occasionally glance her way, their expressions flat and dismissive, before returning to their animated conversation. They were pointedly ignoring her existence. Elara stood alone near a towering Christmas tree, holding a glass of seltzer water she didn't want. David had been pulled away the moment they entered the ballroom by old college friends, their boisterous laughter echoing from the terrace. He seemed to have forgotten her entirely. The room was filled with exclusively white guests, their conversations a low hum of topics Elara couldn't relate to: skiing in Gushtad, the upcoming regatta, family trusts. She tried to join a small group discussing a recent art auction, but as she approached, the conversation politely disbanded, the members drifting away with murmured excuses. Just as she was considering retreating to the empty library, Eleanor Vance approached, her smile as sharp and cold as the icicles forming outside. "You must be David's wife," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Her eyes raked over Elara, from her hair down to her shoes. "Margaret tells me you come from... well, she didn't tell me. Where does your family, Summer?" The question was a classic old money test, a coded inquiry into class and race, designed to put Elara in her place. Elara met her gaze calmly. I didn't have that kind of upbringing, Mrs. Vance. I worked my way through college. Eleanor smirked. Oh, how industrious. David always was the charitable one in the family. Before Elara could form a reply to the biting insult, David returned, blissfully oblivious. He kissed Eleanor's cheek. Eleanor. So glad you could make it. He then turned to Elara, trying to include her. Elara, you must try the crab cakes. They're fantastic. Eleanor placed a proprietary hand on David's arm. Don't bother, David. I'm sure Elara is more used to simpler tastes. David just laughed awkwardly, failing to catch the venom in the words. Oh, you know her, always so humble. Humiliated and angry, Elara turned to walk away, needing air. As she pivoted, she found her path blocked by Margaret, who was holding a glass of dark red wine and looking at her with undisguised contempt. Watch where you're going, Margaret snapped, though it was Elara who had been blocked by the older woman. Elara's hand, still trembling from Eleanor Vance's cruel comments, jerked involuntarily as Margaret stopped short. Elara tried to step around her, desperate to escape the ballroom and the sea of hostile faces. But just as she moved, a waiter carrying a tray heavy with appetizers swerved to avoid another guest, bumping hard into Elara's side. The impact sent Elara stumbling forward. Her hand, holding the seltzer water, flew out, knocking Margaret's arm. The dark red wine from Margaret's glass arced gracefully through the air, splashing all over the front of her expensive, cream-colored designer dress. The room went dead silent. The music seemed to stop. Every eye in the ballroom, over 50 pairs, turned to fixate on Elara and Margaret, standing center stage in their tableau of spilled wine. Elara was mortified. Oh my goodness, Margaret, I am so sorry, she stammered, grabbing napkins from a nearby table. It was an accident, the waiter. But Margaret cut her off. All pretense of old money politeness vanished. Her voice was no longer polite. It was sharp and venomous, loud enough for everyone to hear. You clumsy, worthless girl, she hissed. This is exactly what I expected. You cannot bring this kind of person into a civilized home. The racial undertone of this kind of person hung thick in the air. Elara froze, the napkins crushed in her hand. She looked to David, her eyes pleading for him to intervene, to defend her. David, please, it was an accident. David stepped forward, but only to look at his mother's dress, his face pale with annoyance, not concern for his wife. Mom, it's just a stain. He began weakly. She ruined it. Margaret shrieked, her voice rising hysterically. Just like she's ruining this family. I knew we never should have allowed this. She pointed a trembling finger at Elara, her face contorted with racist rage. I want her out. Get her out of my house. Now. That was an incredibly ugly moment. Margaret has just shown her true, cruel colors in front of everyone. If you are still watching this video and you feel for Elara in this awful situation, please comment with the number 8 below, just to let us know you are standing with her. And if you haven't subscribed to Black Brilliance yet, I highly recommend you do. This is the exact kind of story we are committed to telling, shining a light on injustice and celebrating resilience. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because you do not want to miss what happens when they actually throw her out into that storm. Your support helps us continue to create this great content to inform and inspire you. Now let's get back to the story. The silence in the ballroom was broken only by the howling of the wind outside, a sound less cold than the look in Margaret Windsor's eyes. Elara looked at David, remembering his promise of a good mood at this party, but saw only a coward staring at the floor, unable to meet her gaze. Her heart, which had been pleading, turned cold and hard. David, say something, she pleaded one last time, her voice shaking. David flinched. He looked at his mother, then at Elara, his face a mask of pale indecision. Elara, maybe you should just go home, he stammered. We can talk about this tomorrow. Home. Margaret scoffed, her voice dripping with triumph. She doesn't have one. Not here. She nodded to the 2 large security guards who had been standing discreetly by the entrance. They moved forward, their faces impassive. Please escort this off the property, Margaret commanded. Make sure she doesn't take anything. The word this dehumanized Elara completely. The guards flanked her. They didn't touch her roughly, but their sheer size was intimidating, forcing her to move backward toward the foyer. The guests parted silently, their eyes following her, a mixture of pity and smug satisfaction on their faces. Elara held her head high, refusing to give them the satisfaction of her tears. They walked her to the massive front doors and pulled them open. A blast of icy wind and snow hit her, stealing her breath and whipping her hair across her face. She was pushed gently out onto the doorstep, wearing only her thin party dress and heels. The heavy oak doors slammed shut behind her with a final, echoing thud. Elara was left alone, shivering violently in a blinding blizzard, stranded on the long, unplowed driveway of the estate. The wind howled, and the snow was already ankle-deep. She took a few steps before her heel caught on the uneven stone, and she fell to her knees in the snow, tears freezing on her face. She was completely, utterly alone. Just as the numbness in her fingers began to feel permanent, a pair of headlights cut through the swirling snow, slow and steady. Elara looked up, squinting against the wind. She thought of the cold, indifferent faces in the party, and then looked at the approaching vehicle, half believing it was a hallucination caused by the freezing cold. It wasn't David's car. It was too large. It was a long, black, impossibly sleek limousine, its heavy-duty tires crunching surely through the deep snow. The limousine pulled up beside her. The back door opened. A tall, distinguished black man stepped out into the storm as if it were a mild inconvenience. He was in his 60s, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, and exuded an aura of quiet power. He looked at Elara, kneeling in the snow, his eyes full of a pained recognition. "Elara," he said, his voice deep and certain. Elara, confused and shivering, could only nod, her teeth chattering. "My name is Marcus Sinclair," he said, moving quickly. He shrugged off his own expensive wool overcoat and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was incredibly warm. "I've been looking for you for 28 years. I am your father." The world stopped spinning. Elara stared at him. "My father?" "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he helped her to her feet. "He was a tech billionaire," he explained rapidly, "the founder of Sinclair Industries. His private investigators had finally located her this week, confirming she was the daughter he'd lost to the system after her mother died. He had come tonight, working up the courage to introduce himself, only to arrive just in time to see her being thrown out of the house into a blizzard. He helped her into the warm limo. "Dry off," he said, his voice hardening as he looked back toward the mansion. "We are not leaving. Not yet. They need to understand who they just messed with." The front doors of the Windsor mansion opened a second time that night, but this time, Elara wasn't being thrown out. She was walking back in. The same guests who had watched her humiliation, like Eleanor Vance, were still there, their expressions no longer smug, but frozen in confused shock. The storm still raged outside, but Elara no longer felt the cold, wrapped securely in her father's heavy wool coat. Elara and Mr. Marcus Sinclair walked calmly into the center of the ballroom. Behind them, two men in sharp suits, his security and legal team, who had been in a trailing car, stood flanking the doorway. The music stopped again. A guest near the back whispered, his voice carrying in the silence, That's Marcus Sinclair. From Sinclair Industries." The name dropped like a bomb. Margaret and David's faces drained of all color. Margaret's hand went to her throat. Marcus Sinclair looked at her, his voice calm but cutting, projecting effortlessly across the room. "Mrs. Windsor, I am Marcus Sinclair. I believe you just threw my daughter, Elara Sinclair, out of your home into a blizzard." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You judged her worth by her skin color, assuming she was nothing. You assumed because she was black, she was poor and beneath you. You were wrong." Margaret and David fell over themselves to apologize, stumbling forward. "Mr. Sinclair." "A terrible misunderstanding," Margaret cried. David rushed to Elara, his eyes wide with panic and greed. "Ellie, I didn't know. If you had told me." Elara looked at him, her gaze filled with cold clarity. "You knew I was your wife," she said, her voice steady and strong. That should have been enough. She turned her back on him, a final dismissal. Elara looked at Margaret. "You wanted me out of your house. You have your wish." She and her father turned and walked out, leaving the Windsors to face the silent judgment of their guests, and, as Sinclair's lawyer stepped forward to hand David a card, the impending social and legal ruin of their lives. In the warmth of that limousine, Elara didn't just find a father, she reclaimed the dignity that her husband's family tried to freeze away. Her story is a powerful reminder that we must never judge a person's worth by their appearance, their background, or the color of their skin. True value is often hidden, waiting for the chance to shine, much like a billionaire arriving in a storm. Stories like these, where resilience shines and prejudice is exposed, are the heart of what we do here at Black Brilliance. We invite you to join our community by subscribing and share your thoughts in the comments below. What moment in Elara's story resonated most with you?